I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you for all of you that are on this call this evening. The purpose of this call is about Mehlville at Home, the new online platform that we're looking at launching next August of 2020. We'll start with doing some introductions. My name is Brian Smith. I am the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning in the Mehlville School District. So again, thank you for being part of this. I've got a presentation that I'll share with you momentarily, but I do want to also take a moment just to say a quick thank you to Jessica Papillo and Hunter Robinson. Jessica is our Director of Communications and Hunter is a Communications Specialist. They're running the behind the scenes with regards to what we're doing tonight. So a big thank you to them, as well as to members of our curriculum team who are also on this particular call. I want to take an opportunity I'll share my screen here. The presentation that I have is about 8 slides. There are a couple slides also, one for the elementary and one for the high school. So if you have an elementary student and weren't on the 6 o'clock elementary call, I'll kind of glaze through that. And if you also have a high school student, I'll try to touch base on that as well. But I'm going to take a moment to share my screen and I'll kind of give you some directions as to where we're at. Jessica or Hunter, it's my host disabled the participant screen sharing.
Sorry about that. I'm going to fix that for you real quick.
Unless you want to drive, and that's okay with me too.
You can try that again.
Perfect. Got it. Thank you. All right. So try to move this and present. Okay, so this is about Mehlville at Home, kind of an online learning presentation. The purpose of this is to provide some answers to some basic questions that you may have. We recognize that in a presentation, no matter how long it was, this may not answer the exact question that you may have. So we want to make sure that we give you an opportunity to be able to ask the questions that you have. So we ask you to be able to kind of drop them in the chat. The chat button's located at the bottom of the screen. It says chat, just click on that. That will open up a chat window and you can just go ahead and type your question in there. We will be monitoring these questions, and then once I kind of get through the presentation piece of this conversation, we'll open back up and we'll try to go through those. Mrs. Papillo will kind of moderate those questions and I'll try to answer as many questions as you may have. We will also be developing an FAQ, frequently asked questions, around the questions that are asked, and we'll share that out at a later time. So to start, what is Mehlville at Home? The way that we are viewing this and envisioning this is that this is a virtual school. It's for students in grades K through 12. Why is more for, it's a choice. We want to make sure that we can provide a choice for families, and we'll get into the rationale for the choices later. But the basic guidelines here is that any district student, so any student that is enrolled in the district, that's a resident of the district, can enroll on a semester by semester basis. We say that semester by semester basis simply due to staffing purposes and to try to make sure that kids are in a program for as long of a period as needed so they can try to get the full experience out of it. We do recognize that some kids may sign up for a semester and they may say, not for me. And other kids may say, I want to go to regular school or in-person school first semester, and they say, I want to do that second semester. So, we are asking solely a kind of a semester by semester basis. So that essentially does become like an 18-week commitment. So just to kind of put that out there. Next piece is, why was Mehlville at Home created? And really the reason primarily for that is to meet the diverse needs that we know that our students and families have. This was in planning prior to COVID-19. COVID-19 accelerated our timelines pretty significantly in order to be able to provide this opportunity to our community. And so we want to make sure that we recognize that families and students have needs. It could be for students who are immunocompromised. It might be for students who have schedules that maybe don't necessarily work well in a school setting, but still need to have access to school. So there may be a variety of reasons why somebody wants to be able to access this. One of the things we also take pride in, and we continue to do this work, is to expand opportunities for personalized learning. We want to make sure that kids get an experience that is not just everybody learning the same thing. We also want to make sure that kids understand what they're learning and have an opportunity to have some choice and voice in the things and what they're doing. Also, we do recognize, kind of around this, is that some families may not want to send their student or students back at the beginning of the school year due to COVID-19. While we will do our best efforts to ensure a safe environment for kids and for teachers, if and when we're obviously able to come back, we recognize that may still not be what some families want. And so we respect that. And so offering a choice like this can certainly be a potential benefit. So this is the elementary slide that I told you I would kind of glaze through this to get an idea of where do we get the content, how do we know what people are learning. We use our report cards as a guide. And so that will be the same thing in middle school, but you can get an idea, what do you learn in elementary school? For those that maybe haven't had a kid in elementary school for a year or two. It's English and math, science, social studies, music, PE, and art. We can split reading and writing out of the English language arts curriculum. So you can get an idea, and as you're taking a look at that, you can get an idea and you can say, oh, well, how's the elementary doing it? Well, what we're planning at the elementary is we're planning for a K-1 classroom, a 2-3 classroom, and a 4-5 classroom. At this point in time, that plan may change depending on how many kids and families are interested. So this is the one I think more specific for you because that's why you dialed into this call. And that's what are going to be the things that we teach when it comes to middle school. So currently, and this can change, so I just want to make sure I'm very clear about that. Depending on overall enrollment, where we're at, what we think right now is to having access to an English and a social studies teacher, which means that things like science, math, career education, health, PE, art, music, and exploratory classes. And again, those are all the things that you would see as part of a typical report card. Those are either going to be taught by a Mehlville certified teacher or through another platform like at Launch or Edgenuity. There are some things that I don't have the answers to, but we are working hard on trying to finalize some plans and finalize staffing. And one of the pieces that we'll ask you at the end of this is also to fill out a quick kind of a form that, while it's non-binding, it gives me a better idea of how best to be able to plan for that. So some of these things may change. You can see with the way that the middle school was put in there, was that you would have synchronous, which is two-way communication back and forth with a teacher, seeing their face in a video, with at least English and social studies. Math and science we recognize are certainly very important, and I'm working hard to try to make sure we can create a plan that would give students an opportunity to be able to at least gain those core classes. There will be questions, I'm sure, about, well, what if I want to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that? Those are pieces that we may not have all the answers to yet. But I would encourage you to drop some questions in the chat if you do have questions specifically about that or about particular content subject areas. To give you a sneak peek at the high school, you can see it's obviously very similar to what we just discussed at the middle school. The teacher pieces are based upon certifications. So when we make decisions about middle school, we're trying to make decisions based around the certifications that teachers have. Teacher certification typically can cover like grades 5 through 9 or 7 through 12. That does leave a gap sometimes when we're trying to plan. So the chances of us having somebody that can teach both middle school and high school classes generally is not very good. So usually you have one or the other. Many times you don't have both. And it does require certifications in order to be a teacher of record. So I want to jump back into the conversation and talk about, well, how does this compare to what we would refer to as like an in-person school? I would use the word normal, but I'm not sure what normal is really anymore. So we'll just refer to it as in-person. What we do want to make sure we offer is we want to make sure we offer an Mehlville at home virtual experience similar to an in-person experience. We want kids to be engaged. And what we also know that out of this experience is it's going to require some embedded technology usage. So using some of the tools that are there, that could be things like a learning management system that we are working on. It could be, and that could be like, Google Meet or Google Classroom or things like that. It could be Nearpod, which was a tool that we used during our summer school, middle school experience that had some really positive reception because it works on keeping kids engaged in a process. We also want to make sure students have some choice in pacing. So that may be more like of a menu approach rather than this is due on Monday, this is due on Tuesday. It may be, here are the things that you have, they're going to be due, let's say on Friday. You can choose to be able to do them in the order that you want to be able to do them. So it does provide potentially some level of pacing and some choice as well. We will use the district curriculum with regards to the Mehlville at Home program. That's the same for in-person and it's the same for Mehlville at Home. The district curriculum is a district curriculum. That's what we will teach. And so the resources that are there from a curriculum standpoint would be the same. Also, Mehlville at Home students would take the same assessments that we're required to be able to administer as what their in-person school peers would be. So we have a district assessment plan, and those assessments, we want to make sure that we're providing, the same type of experience as what kids would be getting if they were physically here in one of our schools. One question that I would ask if I were a parent sitting in your shoes, and that is this going to be different than what we did from March till May? And the answer is yes. The difference there is that was remote emergency planning to try to make sure we could provide education to 10,000 kids and to try to train 750 teachers. No small task. So when given time and given the opportunity to train, we do feel that the Mehlville at Home experience will certainly be more robust. What we will have is we will have teachers who are going to be part of this program who will receive both regional and national training on what we would refer as like best practices in teaching virtually for those that maybe do it sometimes. We partner with the Institute for Personalized Learning. That is, we use them to help us with professional development at Mosaic and at the middle school academies, as well as the MyPath program at the high school. And so they've proven to be a really good partner with providing just some high quality, very practical takeaways with regards to their professional development. And plus just modeling it in a platform that we know teachers will also be using. And very similar to the synchronous two-way communication that we have going on right now. Another question that would arise, I would assume, would be, what does a typical Mehlville home day look like? And so you can see there's probably a mix. I listed them as Google Meets. It would be just kind of a mix of live video platform instruction. Whether it's Google Meet or whether it's another video platform, the point is still the same, is that it's synchronous two-way communication back and forth using a video feed. To have that for instruction and classroom discussion. Also to have learning activities that can be completed on their own time. And most importantly, we know that school is the best for all kids when they're engaged. So creating an engaging learning environment, the same as their peers, and for students that are highly interested in online education, they may even find this potentially to be better than sometimes the level of engagement than maybe what they had in a in-person school. I know it came up in the previous elementary conversation, so if the question has already hit the chat, I apologize. In terms of the total amount of time, and this is an estimate, when we look at other programs that do this type of instruction, what you will typically find hour-wise is somewhere in the range of about 5 to 7 hours per day, because that's roughly the amount of time that kids spend about 6.5 hours a day at school. And while not everything at school may have to be replicated online, recess or, sorry, that's elementary, lunch, that's not a piece where you're having to do it online. There are a few pieces that you probably don't have to do transitions. But in terms of trying to teach English, math, science, social studies, opportunities for electives, PE, health, so on and so forth, all of those stack up. They all take time. And so to get to that 5 to 7 hour range is probably not an unrealistic. I know some people may say, well, that's a lot of time to spend in front of a computer. Technically, yes, it would be. But that is where part of that is just understanding what that would look like. And so I want to make sure that to try to be as transparent with you. It may not be all in one setting. There may be some pieces that are broken up a little bit, but we would expect, that kids are certainly engaged and working on things that be part of the district curriculum. Another question, and one of the last questions here that I would expect probably some people to ask, is this going to be around for a while? Like, if once we get through COVID-19 and whatever other pandemic that could possibly hit us right now, is this thing going to be around? And the answer is, that what we're saying is we're committed to trying to provide a virtual option for those that want to access it. And so, whether it exists in this format, whether it gets bigger, whether it gets smaller, that's something that I don't know the answer to yet, because we know that numbers may fluctuate after COVID. They may go up, they may go down, we don't know. But we do want to make sure that we're providing students with an educational platform that helps them succeed. And for some students, an online learning platform might be the thing that helps them have greater success in school. And maybe it's not for all, but it might be enough for some. And again, just to reemphasize, this was a plan that we were already considering, and COVID certainly just made us hit the accelerator on this one significantly. To I think our benefit, though, it's forcing us to think and to look and to react and to try to create something that could be really good for a kid. So this will be the last screen as part of the presentation, and then I'll stop sharing the screen. So I would encourage you that if you have your cell phone, or if you want to take a screenshot, however you want to do it, to be able to either access that QR code, or to be able to take a picture of the bit.ly, or even take a screenshot on your computer. So this feedback form is what we are really interested in you filling out, because that will start to give us some information. And this is a non-binding commitment. So I'm not saying that you have to commit right now at this very time. I understand it's June 30th, and then we still have about 7 or so weeks before school officially starts. So we know a lot of things can change. So what we're simply looking for right now is some information so that we can try to make the best decisions that we can as of right now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Papillo, who will kind of serve as our moderator of questions.
Great, we have a few in here. One of the most recent ones we got was about particular classes. Do you know which electives will be available through Mehlville at Home? Can you expect to have all the same electives that you would in an in-person environment?
I think it would be difficult to have a select number of electives. I look at examples like woodworking. I look at examples like choir and band and orchestra. Those are some pieces that might be very hard to do virtually to get the same exact experience. Depending on the platform, because as you can imagine, our electives and our opportunities are pretty significant. So it would require a whole lot of people to have to probably, fill in all the different things that we offer. But, our goal is to make sure that we can offer a foreign language. Our goal is to make sure we can offer some level of choice in the electives. I don't know exactly what those electives are yet. Some of those will be dependent on whether or not we have a Mehlville teacher teaching it, or whether we go to a different platform like Edgenuity, which is a platform that we have at the high school level. We can certainly expand upon our middle school level, and there are a number of classes that are available through that. But there are also limitations. Again, it goes back to some of those elective classes are going to be really hard to replicate in a real-time setting. It's not watching some of the Broadway singers trying to sing all together. That's probably not to the level of what we would expect, but I do feel that we can offer pretty substantial elective opportunities for our kids.
Then another question we're seeing is related to students who are enrolled in the academy currently. Will that be an option through Mehlville at home?
So I would look at the academy option as that this is a student that would be in the academy, and that academy is kind of an in-house academy. And so a Mehlville at home student would be in an online situation. So they wouldn't be in both. They would be in an online student platform. They would not be live streaming themselves into the academy classroom. So if a kid's in an academy classroom, then that's where that kid would be. If a kid goes into Mehlville at home, that's where that kid could be. While as I talk through this, though, one of the things that we need to figure out some more, and I don't have all the answers to everything here, would be, well, what if my kid goes to the academy for English, math, science, and social studies, and they want to take the other opportunities and they want to do those virtually. Those blended opportunities, kind of a mix and match, are still things that we're working through. I don't have all the answers to that particular one. If I were also an academy parent, I would probably be asking the question, and maybe it's in here, is would my kid lose my spot in the academy? And I think the answer to that one is no, that we would just try to make sure that if a kid tried it in the academy, they were an academy student, and let's say a seventh grader, they were an academy student and they wanted to do Mehlville at home. And then after a semester, they decided that maybe that wasn't for them. Then they said, well, can I have my spot back in the academy? Those would be some conversations we would simply need to be able to have with the administrators and with the teachers there, just to ensure that we weren't putting a kid in a position where they wouldn't have success. I always want to try to make sure we put kids in positions where they can be successful.
And then we had a question about students who are in advanced classes. Will there be the opportunities to accelerate learning through Mehlville at home?
So that's a really good question. Part of that's going to be based upon staffing. One of the things that I think I would expect is that when you look at the course offerings that would be offered, I think like sixth grade English or seventh grade English or eighth grade English, depending on who we had, that is one of those questions that I'm going to say I don't know. It's not that we're not trying to accelerate things and to try to provide this as the most robust experience. I don't know, because some of that's simply going to be a staffing issue, and some of it's just going to be in access to the curriculum issue. So if we have a sixth grade advanced math class, if we're having to use Edgenuity to be able to offer that, we don't currently offer an experience that's all of sixth grade and half the seventh grade experience through the Edgenuity platform. Edgenuity is kind of a list of classes that can be offered and can be modified. I'm not sure we can do it down to that level. It's probably more details than you wanted to know, but that's kind of the lens that I'm trying to look through everything right now. So I don't know, but it's a point well taken, and will be something we will be looking into.
And then what about students who are in Stretch, the gifted program, or students who have an IEP?
It's a good question. So I'll start with students who have an IEP. Students who have an IEP will need services. And if students need services, then it would be our obligation to work with special school district to ensure that that student had access to the services in which they need. Now, that being said, just kind of recognize some limitations here. They get services. They will get services, no question. Trying to do some of the services, like physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech, are maybe a little bit more difficult to try to do than if a kid simply has a reading comprehension disability or a math calculation disability, just because of the actual service that needs to be provided to a kid. That's a piece where, how do you do teletherapy, and will special school district allow some of those things? So that is a question too, and I don't want to hide behind I don't have the answers to all these questions. I'm trying to make sure I can be as transparent and forthright as possible. But that is one that is not, it's being planned for, but I don't have a final answer to that one yet. And with regards to gifted, currently gifted services are there. We will offer those at typically at Washington and we would still continue to provide some level of that. That may not look exactly like what the current, I'm sorry, and that elementary, it was elementary is at Washington. So the other ones are at each of the individual schools, and it's done through the specific content of a particular class, whether that be English or whether that be social studies. So in that particular situation, it may or may not look exactly like maybe how they've received it, but trying to get minutes during a weekly basis probably would not be as difficult. What I don't know there would be, do we have a Mehlville teacher who has time available in which to be able to do it? And so then therefore I was just trying to work through some of the logistics.
Then what about before and after school activities and opportunities to socialize? Will that be provided through Mehlville at Home?
So I think Mehlville at Home can do a lot of things. I don't necessarily know if it can provide an exact replica of what a middle school experience looks like. It does from a learning standpoint, it does from a teaching standpoint, or that's the goal of it. But we also know that before school and after school activities are important. And so, there's no reason to think that if a family chooses or if a student chooses to be able to do so, we're not limiting somebody from being able to access something in a before school or after school fashion. Now those might be in person, and that's where there may be a bit of an issue for some families, because they may say, I'm not comfortable currently in the state of the environment with sending my kids out to do a before or after school activity. And if that's the case, then that's perfectly fine and acceptable. That's going to be more of a decision, I think, for a family, but the district would not restrict kids from being able to come in and do a before school or after school opportunity, with the understanding that it's probably going to be in person. Some things just can't be replicated. You can't replicate cross country virtually. Not very well, at least.
And then we had some questions about whether there'd be a list of courses available, middle school elective style courses available at a certain point, and questions about how to enroll and sign up for this program.
Okay, so with regards to the list of courses, the answer is yes, we're working on that particular piece, because part of that's just staffing. One thing you probably have to understand with regards to teachers and certification is not only do they have kind of a grade band, they also sometimes have a content band. And so, like, I can be a fifth grade through ninth grade ELA teacher, and I'm certified to teach any of those grade levels, but I may not be able to teach any of those other things. So part of the list of courses is also going to be dependent on how many people do we have committed to the program, both on the teacher end as well as on the student end. Obviously, the more students we would have, the potential of more offerings. We would have a limited number of offerings that would be there, enough to be able to meet what would be part of the requirements from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. But we may not be able to roll out the complete scope of everything. And again, sometimes trying to replicate certain experiences are going to be tough. Trying to do woods in a virtual manner, or trying to do facts and family consumer science in a virtual manner, could be a little difficult. So some classes are just not as flexible with regards to the activities in which they do.
And I'm not sure if you answered the sign up or enrollment, but just with that reminder to follow that link. And basically you're raising your hand and saying, I'm interested in this program for some additional follow-up.
Yeah, interest, it's not binding. I mean, I think that's an important thing, is that we're not saying that if you sign it today, you said, we recognize that a lot of things can change. It's June 30th. I will tell you that, in about 3 weeks, you're going to see a whole lot of communication that's going to come out from a whole lot of school districts, not just Mehlville, but a lot of school districts, as they begin to kind of release their plans. That is the kind of the general time frame of it, is around that July 20th piece, sometime during that week. And so, be on the lookout for that information too, because that information may very well kind of help you wholly confirm if this is something you want to be able to do, or if we're in good shape and maybe things turn with regards to the state of the environment, then you may make a decision as family that maybe you don't think this is the best option and you want your kid to go back in person. both are fine and acceptable. You know, that our job from the curriculum department is to try to create some opportunities, some learning opportunities for kids. And if we're going to create learning opportunities, then I want them to try to be the best that they can be based upon what kind of enrollment that we have.
So I just wanted to point out that this Zoom is being recorded, and we'll share it on the district website this week. And all of the questions that have been entered into the chat, we're gathering those as well to create a frequently asked questions document. I'm just kind of looking through these questions, and I think we've hit on them so far. Oh, one question: will it be pass, fail, or actual grade?
Actual grades. Well, let me say this, because we're in middle school. So at the 6th grade level and at the 7th grade level, it's standards based. So that will roll up. You know, so 6th graders had that last year. And so those kids are now 7th graders. And that will be for English, math, science, social studies, and a handful of electives. The other half of the electives will be for the 21-22 school year. So those will roll up in the process. So it's not pass fail. It will not be kind of a replication of what we had from March until May. It will be, you know, a level that you're measuring standards. You're measuring what are your kids learning in classes. And that's the thing that I always would say about a report card, is when you look at a report card, that should be a reflection of what your kids have learned. And so sometimes when you look at a report card and you see a letter grade that is attached with a content area, that doesn't tell me much. You can tell me a little, and I make, you know, some assumptions about that. But what we're trying to get better at is obviously give you the information so you know exactly what your kids are learning and to what level are they actually learning at. And so that, we do feel pretty strongly that had been, you know, elementary's been doing it for 10, 11 years, somewhere along those lines, maybe even longer. So that is just a piece that we've rolled through. 8th graders this year would be on a ABCDF system. So even if they're doing Mehlville online, that would be an ABCDF system. But your 6th and 7th graders would be standards based.
Oops, I was on mute. Will 8th graders have the opportunity to take high school courses or earn high school credit if they're at Mehlville at home?
That would be the goal. I don't have the answer to that one yet, but that would be revolving around Algebra 1, and that would be revolving around a foreign language. And so I think the goal that we would want to make sure that we offered for students that would be 8th graders is that, you know, math may have to be split out a little bit. It may require an Algebra 1, and it may require an 8th grade math. And foreign languages, you know, that we would offer, trying to make sure that we can do that. That will be one where, from a certification standpoint, trying to find somebody who has a French certificate or a German certificate or a Spanish certificate can sometimes be a little difficult, but the district is working on that right now to try to make sure that we come up with some pieces so we can make things available for kids. I'm going to share my screen again just one more time so that way we can go back to the QR code as well as the bit.ly to make sure that if you didn't get that before, I want to make sure that you do have that. So that is located here. And again, just a reminder that this needs to be a district resident that their son or their daughter would be accessing Mehlville at home. The intention is not to make this a statewide kind of program like a few other school districts have done. This is intended to be able to provide an opportunity for our own kids to be able to have access to an online curriculum as much as you want to be able to do it, technically up to 100%. So I'll stop unsharing here.
And then one more question is, how would PE be done in middle school? And I love this question just because Hunter and I got to see a summer session PE class in action.
Yeah, so, you know, you think about PE and, you know, when you start taking a look at the statewide grade level expectations for physical education, it also covers health. It's more of a comprehensive health program. So looking at the standards that the state releases with regards to PE and health, it's recommended that kids are getting exercise for 30 minutes a day, 150 minutes a week. That's just part of their overall education. There's also the health component that certainly comes into play about, eating right and having, good habits, practicing, good hygiene. So all of those pieces are going to be part of that. I would expect that we would have to have some level of a log to try to log the total minutes that somebody was doing on a daily basis. But you may have some shared activities too. If you have a PE teacher that can do synchronous communication, like with what I'm doing with you right now, leading you all through yoga could be an opportunity to do part of that. I won't lead you through yoga tonight, but that's what kind of the experiences maybe some of your kids would have.
And I think this one might be in the bucket if we don't know right now, but we're working on an answer. Are there options for Wi-Fi if families don't have it?
I'd like to say that I don't know that one right now, but I can tell you that based upon some of the survey results that we had, and I must say that, kudos to the community for responding back to the survey that was sent out last week. We had over 6,000 responses within like a week's time, which is really, that's a great turn in rate. That information said it was about 2 to 3% of those that completed the survey, saying that they did not have reliable internet service. So, we're working on things like hotspots in order to try to make sure that internet access would be available for all. It would probably be very important that a person that would want to do this program would have a level of internet access they feel comfortable with accessing on a regular basis at their house or wherever this may be occurring.
We have a question I'm not sure I understand. So maybe you do, Dr. Smith. Does Mehlville access peak fueled or only the other two mentioned?
So in terms of our commitment to that, our primary platform at the high school level has been Edgenuity, which is kind of a fuel ed sort of thing. That has been the partner that we've had for right now. And so we would work through some of those pieces about what is the best option. Ideally, the best option would be for me to be able to say, we can do, a Mehlville school teacher can teach every single one of the classes that your kids would be taking. In reality, that would be really tough to be able to do simply because we don't know the number of kids that are going to enroll. And we also have to try to make sure that we have the appropriate staffing for the kids that would still be here. So we're trying to figure out how to be able to staff that. Platform-wise, Edgenuity is kind of our go-to at this particular point in time. But we may look to try to expand upon that footprint as well.
I think we've covered sort of all of these questions at some point in the video. And I know we've got some kind of unique situations that people are asking about, and we'll have opportunities to kind of work through that closer to August and registration and enrollment. There was one thing to clarify about grading. Somebody mentioned that middle school would be letter grade versus standards-based grading. And I just wanted to give you the opportunity to clarify that because it is standards-based, correct?
It is standards-based in 6th grade and 7th grade. The elective, the encore courses, there are a handful still that will be graded either at the 6th grade or 7th grade level, but by the 21-22 school year, all teachers in all grade levels, 6th, 7th, and 8th, core and encore, would be standards based. So it would be a very minimal amount of letter grades that you would see on a report card, and in SIS through the parent portal, which if you don't have access, I would certainly encourage you to reach out to your building principal to help you get access. You can toggle back and forth between the traditional grade card, which many times you'll see very little on it, especially if your kid's going to be pretty much standards based. You can toggle over to the standards based one. And then that's where you can start to see all of the standards that your kid would be learning in English and math and science and social studies, so on and so forth. At the 8th grade level only for the 2021 school year, those students would be receiving letter grades in at least those core content areas. And they may be receiving some standards-based grades in some of the elective or on-core classes that they have as well. Just we did it by department, so like fine arts or industrial technology. We tried to do that by whole department so that we didn't have some people doing it and some people not doing it, at least by department.
And then maybe we can wrap with kind of 2 points that are questions I'm seeing here, which you kind of hit on already about social opportunities for kids, but we kind of talked about before and after school activities. I know parents are questioning whether there will be social activities baked into the Mehlville at Home program. And then also, are there ways to address any learning gaps that kids might come in with, or just in general learning gaps they might have from Mehlville at Home or other programs?
So I think that's a really good question, and I think it probably is a good one to kind of wrap up with. But so let me say this with regards to learning gaps, and I know that at we're talking about 8 or 9 weeks worth of potential access to curriculum. I don't want to diminish this because I have a soon-to-be 6th grader, soon-to-be 4th grader, and one in preschool. And so I am living the fact, what are we having them do to try to make sure that we accommodate the gap that maybe was created a little bit. So I don't want to diminish this. But one of the things that it's always really enlightening to do is to look at the grade level expectations in English, in math, in science, and in social studies. Math is probably more the outlier, simply because it's a little bit more foundational. But if you look at the 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade level expectations for English, they're virtually the same. And for science, they are different, but they're categorized very differently. So like science would be earth science, and you have physical science, and so on and so forth. So we will build in opportunities. That's where I think part of that voice and choice tends to come into play. We're not going to stop students from wanting to learn more, and trying to figure out ways in which to be able to help them grow is going to be really, really important, whether it's an online platform or whether it's going to be a virtual platform. We'll also continue to use tools like either iReady or iExcel in math and in English to be able to help support kids in terms of the tools. We will continue to look at other opportunities as well. Star reading is an example that we do periodically during the course of the year to engage reading levels. And so there are those types of pieces and tools that can help us know where a kid's at, maybe better than what we've ever had before. And the thing that we do know is that kids will show up on day one, and we will take them exactly where they're at, no matter where they're at. And our job is to make sure that we at least get them a year's progress, and if not more. Now, I'm not promising anything out of a Mehlville at Home program, but that should be our job of teachers, and that should be the job of administrators, for us to always be looking at trying to make a year's worth of progress. More, if better, is better, but that's where our eyes are always at. And especially in a time where we know we had some things that were not taught or maybe not, covered in a process. We are going to try to map those things out. We're not going to end up going back, though, and changing all of our report cards to try to reflect a 4th quarter standard that maybe somebody didn't hit. But one of the things that will be really important is the vertical articulation from one grade level to the next grade level to say, all right, you taught that 4th quarter of your 4th grade year. I also assessed that the 1st quarter of my 5th grade year. I'll need to make sure I just hit that a little bit harder. So some things will already be built in to kind of cover that gap, just with the way that a statewide curriculum looks. And I'd have to kind of map some things out for you to get some better understanding. So I know that we'll have a few questions that will continue to pop open. So we're going to try to leave the chat open for another minute or two as we kind of wrap up this particular meeting. I do want to say thank you for taking the time out of your evening to be able to hop on a call, to be able to talk a little bit about education and your kids, and maybe if Mehlville at Home is going to be the right fit for them or not. We're trying to give you as much information as what you can to be able to make some decisions. And we're still working on some pieces. We're working hard on some pieces. And as Hunter had said there in the chat, please make sure that you do fill out that survey, because we do want to know that if you're thinking about it, but maybe you need a little bit more information, or you need to wait to see, well, what classes are offered or what structure is this. We respect that. And, this is a non-binding agreement. Just give us an idea of, like, if you've realized, oh, I really want to do this, great. If you're like, I really don't want to do this, that's okay too. So we just want to make sure that we offer it as an opportunity to our parents and to our families. So thank you again for taking the time to meet with us tonight. Have a wonderful evening.
And I think we have Dr. Gaines on here who wanted to wrap up with a few thoughts as well.
Good evening, everyone. And I apologize, you're not going to see me on video. I'm on a satellite internet connection, which isn't always very good. So video is usually bad for that. But I want to thank Dr. Smith for taking some time to share information. If you don't know, this is his second of 3 sessions tonight, as he works through and tries to explain things to a number of folks. We know that there are still a lot of unanswered, very specific and detailed questions, and we're going to try to get responses out to those in the coming weeks. One of the things that we've kind of tried to do is build a concept, and we've reached out to our teaching staff to gauge interest in that concept and whether or not we thought that we could move it forward. Now we're kind of beginning to explore what our parents and families might think of it and what questions they might have as we go into a little bit more detailed level and work of planning. Dr. Smith did mention the survey that we've got going on that closed tonight. We'll be pushing those results out probably at the end of next week. I had looked at it this afternoon, and it looks like that we've got a number of our families who have concerns about returning to school based around COVID-19. So we are trying to create something that definitely kind of fits and can work, and we can continue to educate kids, and we'll try to grow that program over time. If you think about just elementary versus middle school versus high school, there's just a lot more flexibility at a high school than there is at a middle school, and a little bit more flexibility at a middle school than there is at an elementary. And we're probably going to see that as we continue to develop ongoing virtual opportunities. So again, thank you all very much for spending some time with us tonight. I hope the rest of your evening goes well. Hope you have a great week and completely awesome 4th of July. Thanks, everybody.